Hello, and welcome to the Authentically Elisa podcast, Unmasking Your True Self. I'm Elisa Bogarts, your guide on this journey to discovering the most genuine version of yourself. Each episode is a step towards unveiling the incredible power that lies within you as we strip away all the shoulds and shine a light on the coulds. Together, we'll explore the path of self-empowerment, self-confidence, and the courage to be unapologetically you. Thank you for being here. Hello, and welcome to episode number 2. In this episode, we're going to be talking about cultivating the creative edge, how to use non-ordinary states of consciousness to take your business to the next level. We're going to talk about the same techniques used by elite athletes like Navy SEALs, top Google executives, and championship athletes. And these are all based on the Stanford University master's degree course, Creativity in Business. And we're going to talk about how to think more like outside the box and how to tap into newfound innovation and inspiration to take your professional and personal life to the next level. We're going to look at how to achieve altered states of consciousness to enter really like a nice flow state to enhance creativity and productivity. Today, my guest is the one and only Jennifer Grace, who is a mindset trainer. Jennifer Grace was named Miami's #1 life coach by New Times. She said she's a Hay House author, motivational speaker, radio show host, and corporate wellness coach. Jennifer's goal-oriented approach to mindfulness earned her the role of Prada's first ever mindset coach in 2020. So amazing. She worked for Prada. She also works for corporations such as a mindset coach, such as Facebook, Turner, HCI, Widecoat, and EO. She's been featured on several morning shows like NBC6, Balancing Act of Lifetime TV, San Diego Living, CTV Style, to name a few. Jennifer has built her business to over 7 figures in annual revenue by empowering people worldwide to maximize their potential. Her inspirational reach continues to change lives, and she has definitely changed mine because she's also my mentor, friend, and fellow coach. And I have her actually to thank for this podcast because she is the catalyst that got me to actually do this, which I am just so grateful for. Hi, Jen. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hi, I'm so
Hi.
happy to be here. This is exciting.
So exciting. So,
Hmm.
tell me like how you got into this field of work and why you're just so passionate about it.
Let's see. I was a lost little lamb exiting my divorce and my work as a filmmaker, an actor, and I was just searching for deeper meaning, and I stumbled upon the course that comes from Stanford, took it as a student first and just popped and thought, wow, this is something I really think could change so many lives. And I got certified in it and eventually became the lead train the trainer and then redesign the training for kids and teens and to take it into corporations. So it just came out of me dancing with the work myself and having such a profound experience with it that it just was the impetus of wanting anybody and everybody to have this training.
Yeah, it is such a good training. And I kind of had the same experience with coaching as well. It's like kind of this like sort of glimpse of what it can do and just like, wow, this
Yeah.
is so amazing, so transformational. Like need to get it out there. Everyone needs a little bit of coaching.
Yeah, for sure. Tools. We all need tools.
Yeah, exactly. So, what does authenticity mean to you? Because I remember when I took Clarity Catalyst oh God, I think it was almost 3 years ago now,
Hmm.
that you talked about when you sort of first became a coach. You know, you were Jennifer Grace and you're all sort
Yes.
of like mystical and amazing, but you felt like you had to kind of hide parts of yourself, right? Like you couldn't,
Yeah.
didn't feel like you could fully be authentic in your business.
Absolutely. It's really funny if you go back and listen to some of my Hay House radio shows in the beginning, you literally hear my voice is completely different. And I was just talking like, hello, I'm a spiritual teacher and I do mindfulness and emotional intelligence, and I can't really talk like I'm from Brooklyn.
Right.
And so I don't know, it's almost like a caricature of like who I thought I was supposed to be,
Mm.
never cursing and speaking in this lovely voice and not really in my power. In my comedy, I put the comedy up on the shelf and the curse words up on the shelf and everything up on the shelf because I thought I was supposed to be a certain way. And slowly, as I got more comfortable with what I was doing, the real me came back out. And that's actually when my business took off, was when
Wow.
I just gave myself permission to be exactly who I was. And literally, the highest compliment anybody can give me is, Jen, you are so real. You're as real as it's going to get. And that to me is like, I'm doing the work.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be so hard to just be the real you. Like I struggle with that now still sometimes with certain people
Yeah.
or certain things. And I'm like, can I be this way or say that? Or like, how are people going to take it? But
Totally,
you're right.
because
When you're just
we have
real.
made up conceptions of the way that we're supposed to be, and then underneath some of that also can be insecurity, and I'm not good enough, so I have to be me plus 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 plus. And so I think when we do this deep work and we really honor ourselves and love ourselves and respect ourselves and feel that we are enough, that we don't have to show up with this mask on, that's when the rubber hits the road and we actually take off.
Fully. And sometimes it can be hard to figure out who's the real me. Like I've noticed with myself that I've, you know, played these different personas. And it's like, okay, so is that, being like maybe a bit crass and cheeky? Is that really me? Or was that sort of a role I played with certain people? Like, or
Mhm.
is, like, or is that because like
Yeah.
when I was younger, I kind of like felt I had to be sort of like one of the boys, girls, like kind of
Yeah.
like with the boys. And so I was like, is that really me or is it not? And so it can take doing that sort of deep work to see, yeah, am I actually
Yeah.
being authentic or is that still a role I'm playing?
Right. Because I think we have different facets of ourselves. Like who I show up as a mother is different. Who I show up with my best friends from college is different with my students, is different with my corporate clients. Right. So
Mhm.
those are roles and there's, social constructs, but like that we are ourselves authentically expressing inside of that role. I think is where we can always be ourselves. Just this is me as the mother. This is my expression as the best friend, and as long as we're feeling like we're not faking that, um, then we're being authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And just allowing yourself to be that too. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's okay. Yeah. I love that. The different roles. Yeah. Cause sometimes there are some things where I'm like, maybe you don't say that right now because you're in an office. And
Yeah. Because
like
it's
a
not
joke will pop in my
appropriate.
head. I'm like, maybe
Right.
don't say that joke right now.
Yeah. And like the things I talk about with my girlfriends, I'm not going to talk about with my friend, with my son. You know what I mean? Like there's just things that are appropriate, but as long as I'm being an authentic mom with him, then I'm being authentic, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
So let's
Mhm.
dive into cultivating the creative edge. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I read this book called Stealing Fire, which
Mm.
really was the catalyst for this work that I do around it. And it was almost like edifying everything I was teaching in the Culture Catalyst. The Culture Catalyst 8-week program that I bring into corporations and the lead train the trainer for, it's a program to help people. The very first quote is to get clear and authentic and creative. And so those are the three pillars of the training. And I was listening to this book, Stealing Fire, which was speaking into the fact that now our Navy SEALs, the top executives at Google, are all using these mindfulness and emotional intelligence techniques in order to be the best that they can be in their fields. And whether it's
So
the
cool.
Google execs, using mindfulness and meditation and uninterrupted chunks of time where they're not being emailed or asked to be in meetings so that they can get into what's called flow state, as well as how the Navy SEALs can get into flow state so that when they are going into enemy territory and they cannot speak, they are able to move as one. They have group flow, they have group mind. So these
Wow.
non-ordinary states of consciousness will accelerate you getting into flow state. A really cool example is like even for the Navy SEALs, they put them in sleep deprivation, not sleep deprivation, sensory deprivation tanks, those float tanks that
Oh,
they put in binaural beats, meditation for them. And it actually accelerates their ability to learn a language from 6 months down to 6 weeks.
what? That's
Uh-huh. It's
incredible.
Yeah, using the power of meditation and one of the non-ordinary states of consciousness, float tank, you know? So I'm going in now and teaching, people who are in corporations these non-ordinary states of consciousness for them to tap into their flow because perhaps their industry has been disrupted by AI or COVID, or perhaps they're exhibiting burnout, with their employees. And so they need to have a regeneration of creativity and connection within the workplace. So we're teaching them these woo-woo tools that, according to the Navy SEALs and top execs at Google, aren't so woo-woo.
Right. Yeah, I remember in one of the corporations that I worked in, I don't think he was like the top guy, but he was maybe like second to that. He was way up there. He was like the head of our area. And he talked about that. And actually he had was it Google? One of those giant guys actually come in and did an interview and he talked about that. And the way that he was speaking, I was like, this guy's speaking my language. And I was so surprised that he was able to talk about mindfulness and like different tools that he
Yeah,
used. And I thought it was just so cool that he was
yeah,
bringing that into his interview because I feel like sometimes some people need to hide that about themselves or be like, oh no, I'm not woo because I'm,
yeah,
some corporate executive. I can't be
right.
that because of the sort of conditioning, what we think that looks like. And I just thought that was just so neat that he just openly talked about the
Yeah,
mindfulness things that he did.
they do a lot of personal development at that company.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true how you were saying about like bringing it into sort of where the employees are and like burnout and all of that. And I noticed that in one company where I worked with where they got acquired and the culture completely changed because the
completely.
company that acquired them was entirely different. And so there was like a lot going on and like a lot of people left. And I feel like, if they had had this course or like learning
Yes.
how to do that, how to like bring it back up, how to like merge the two together and find some synergy
Mhm.
in the culture as opposed to sort of this um,
Square
trying to
peg, round
conform everybody.
hole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about that. Like how do you do that? How do you start to change
We
that?
do the training, and the training is set up in such a way to give people that work together, an opportunity to go deeper, be more vulnerable. And when you start to really understand and know people that you work with, your field of caring increases and there's a bond that gets created. We have them pair every week, and they do peer coaching sessions. And so maybe, during the week they pass each other and like, hey, how you doing? Or they're just talking small talk. But when they're in this course, they're talking big talk and they're really going there with each other. And so when people actually know the people that they work with and begin to really care about them and like them, and then work becomes more fun. We are at work 8 hours a day, and when people are putting on these acts and not being real with each other, there's a lack of connection. And a basic human need is connection. And so, what we're providing in these trainings is an ability for them to see vulnerability not as a weakness, but as a way to connect. And then, what starts to happen is the more connected they are, there becomes a group mind. They become more creative together, and it starts to change the culture. They let go of their expectations of each other, their judgments of each other. They become more present. They're really listening. The communication changes. So, through just teaching them very simple, practical tools and pairing them up and having them go deeper, the magic just kind of happens.
I love that. Yeah, so my role in corporate was this project manager and and like as a scrum master, so I would facilitate all the meetings and would always try and have some type of icebreaker or something like that or sometimes I would bring it in if we had like a
Yeah.
retrospective or we did some type of team building. And I remember once I got them to do like some type of quiz. I think it was Gretchen Rubin's Four Tendencies quiz. And it was
Okay.
like the how we sort of respond to expectations. And there was kind of four categories. And it totally brought the team closer together. And it was quite funny. One guy said something like one of the tendencies is the questioner. And he was like, well, I'm not quite sure about that. And we're like, oh, that's not a surprise. Immediately questioned it. And it was just kind of
That's
brought this little
funny.
joke and like kind of got and the reason why I did it was for people to understand how they can work with each other. If you're working with someone who's maybe more of an obliger and we notice that they're obliging and saying yes and taking on way too much
Yeah,
work and obligers can burn out, then maybe we can, if we know that someone's a questioner, then we can be more patient with them, just
yeah.
kind of answer their questions. And so I'm sure something similar happens with what you teach.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just, knowing thyself. The more you know yourself, and you can manage yourself, also giving them coping skills so that they become self-clearing ovens. A lot of times we're, stressed out and we're putting that upon our coworkers, in the transformational tools in this course, you become the self-clearing oven. Like you can do the work internally without vomiting on everybody around you when you're upset. You're able to just like handle it and have a lot of more self-awareness when you're showing up, maybe a little jarring and had an upsetting thing happen at home. And how do you rebalance yourself and get clear so that you walk into work kinder and more compassionate? And when you have a setting like that, there's just more productivity and more creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause
Mhm.
there's nothing worse than there being somebody that you feel like you have to walk on eggshells around or somebody
Yeah.
sort of fear you get in the thing and you're like, oh, this might be okay. This might not be okay.
Yeah.
That just
And
creates
there's a
this.
really cool book called The Culture Code. They actually studied the 7 highest performing teams in the world. And
Mm,
what they found, that they had in common was that they were vulnerable with each other, that they didn't judge each other and have expectations of each other. And it's exactly what we teach in the training, which is very different than the past 50 years in corporations, right? So it's like breaking ground to do something differently. But if we look to see who are the most successful teams, this is what they are doing. And it may be against the grain and against the norm, but it does work.
yes.
Mhm.
It's so interesting when you talk about vulnerability. I've been kind of noticing lately that not everybody's comfortable with that.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah. And not
All.
even being vulnerable, but like if sometimes if I'm vulnerable with people, they don't know how to take it. They're
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
Yep.
whoa." So I find it either kind of gets like ignored or the subject gets changed or they kind of
Yeah,
like jump into like fixer mode or something like that. And I'm
right.
just like,
Or make a
"Oh."
joke or yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. 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 I find
Well,
that
we
I
grew up
just
with messaging that vulnerability is not okay. It's a sign of weakness, especially in the corporate structure.
Mhm.
And those are the conversations that we're looking to change because it doesn't work. It doesn't work being fake and phony and wearing the mask creates disconnection. Then we have loss of employees. People don't feel comfortable working somewhere because they just can't be themselves.
Yeah.
And to not be yourself 8 hours a day
Mm.
is a really long time to wear a mask. And
Yeah.
it's not healthy. And that's why there's burnout. And that's why people quit and turnover. And, because they're just
Especially
being
if you're
in.
on like 8 hours of Zoom.
Yeah.
Like that's draining in itself, but
Yeah.
also to feel like you have to like be performing on camera the whole time.
Right.
Oh, it's just way too
Hmm.
much.
It is.
That actually reminded me of something when I had a peer who was also a project manager and we got on along really well. And then he became a manager. And about I think maybe 6 months to a year after he got that role, he became my manager. And so our first meeting, he thought that I would very much like to have things like documented and have lists and things like that. But I had had some toxic managers in the past. So to me, if someone's documenting everything, I'm like, how are you going to hold that against me later? Right. I
Yeah.
feel like it's going to come back to me in some way.
Right.
And so he was like, oh, I thought that you would like that. And that point in my life, I was going like through a very bad breakup and I was feeling really low. And I was like, did my other manager tell you my situation right now? And he was like, no. And because I felt so comfortable with him, I just told him the situation and I like started crying. And the poor guy, he was there just like, he had this kind of surprised look on his face, like, oh my gosh, she's crying right now. Cause I think that as
Right.
peers, we had a different relationship and I wouldn't necessarily be maybe that vulnerable with everybody
Yeah.
else that I worked with. But with my manager, I felt like I could be more personal.
Yeah.
And I just said to him, I was like, what I really need right now is just like kindness and patience because like it's very difficult for me to be at work right now and it's hard for me to like be showing up and facilitating meetings and trying to be positive or
And
whatever
acting like I'm
going through all
fine.
this. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
so from your side, if you could just give me that kindness and compassion. He's like, okay, I
Right.
can do that. And it was really easy, but I felt so glad that I was vulnerable and open with him and told him what I needed
Yep.
because then it made my work life so much better.
Yeah. And I mean, Brene Brown, her entire life's work is based on this, and daring greatly and dare to lead. And, that they're like, even with the roles that we play, there are fine lines in, how much to share and, all of that stays professional, but still authentic. So there's a way to be inside of the context of what we're talking about and share appropriately so that we're not, hiding how we really feel and we're not, walking around crying all day long,
Right.
but that, may know that we're going through a tough time, that people can have more compassion, which makes it easier for us to be at work and we don't get as sick and then we don't miss work. And, it's a cycle, that a rolling snowball that can happen. I
Yeah,
think.
and I think too if people can share sort of like the right amount and if the team is kind of that cohesive and they're working really well together and they care about
Yeah.
each other like you were describing, if someone has to be out because of some personal family emergency or whatever it may be, I feel like other people come in and they will gladly pick up the slack or pick up their what they need to do or
Yes.
pull keep the team moving because they have that compassion as opposed to just being like, where's this person just been off for a week, and like being
Right.
all grumpy and whatever. And like,
Right.
and they're like, they're not doing their job. Like, why should I do that? You're going to pay me
Yeah.
for whatever might happen. They might just be like, no, we're here for you. We will help you because we know that you'll come back. Come back when you're ready. And,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
trust and love there. Yeah.
Hmm.
So what's your favorite tool that you teach within that program?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Um, I think I love this one tool, especially with my corporate clients. It's called What is the Issue? Because we're all walking around
Mm,
with all these issues, right? We've got an issue with the coworker, an issue with the client, we got an issue with our kids' school, we got an issue with we got all these issues. And they're in our space, for us to
yeah.
be clear and to be able to do our work well and to be able to communicate and enjoy our day. So it's 6 questions. It takes 4 minutes. And literally at the end of the 4 minutes, an issue that is going round and round and round and round inside of all of our heads for weeks or months or who knows how long we've been dealing with this issue is clear, is many times resolved in as little as 6 minutes. And it just blows their mind. It's so powerful. I'm happy to give it to you if you'd like to share it with your audience. You can
Yeah, that
put
would
it
be
in the show
awesome.
notes. Something. Yeah, it is. Anytime I'm like not knowing what to do with something, I go to that 6 questions and I'm like, I got it. I know what to do. So
Wow.
yeah, I
That's super
really love that
powerful.
tool. And that, we have them doing daily reflective writing as well. Because again, how do you make sense of everything that's going round and round and round inside of our heads? The second you put pen to paper, what was cloudy is all of a sudden clear, and
Mhm.
that one's fun. And then there's another one that I love that's great, if you're having a conflict at work, or at home, and it's called The Trouble with You and the Trouble with Me When I'm Around You. And it's a way for us to just like let that voice of judgment rip, like you're controlling and you're not listening and you're this and you're that, and just like allow yourself to feel all of the judgment and then step to the other side and say, well, what would my voice of wisdom say? My voice of wisdom would say is, you might be not loving yourself or being insecure. That's why you're showing up that you feel like you have the need to control because it's coming from a space of a lack of self-love, and then you do it to yourself. And the trouble with me is I shut down, I get defensive, and so then you go on the other side again and go to your voice of wisdom, like, well, what could I do differently? Like, instead, I could get curious, and I could stay present. I can be more compassionate. So it's just unbelievable how you can just do that tool real quick when you get triggered or tagged by a client or a coworker, and you need to work with this person. You need to see them every single day. And again, that could just ruin your experience at
Mm,
work. So
yeah.
giving people tools and processes, not only to do those kinds of techniques, but also we have all, effective communication in the workplace, all different tools of how to become better communicators, because we weren't taught this in school. We're
Yeah.
taught how to effectively communicate without blaming and shaming and, getting people defensive. Like that's just, so there's a lot of conflict resolution tools as well.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I've worked
Yeah.
in so many toxic environments or had somebody that just, like I would say their name, they would just be like, "Ugh," like you could
Right.
see it in their face. Like, and I
Yeah.
was like, what did I do to like I have no idea. There must have been something at
Right.
some point, but now for some reason you hate me and you can't even stand me like saying
Yeah.
your name, so I've like, and I think also there's a thing with different cultures and different generations as
Sure.
well of what we were
Yep.
taught or not taught, or and I think, yeah, like, it's the older generations were probably taught even less than the younger ones, right? And
Yeah.
so like, and so there's always this kind of like mismatch, and I just think that everything that you're talking about is just so needed in so many workplaces because it's like
Yes.
how do we communicate together, knowing our differences, knowing,
Mhm.
especially like, well, in many actually worldwide, like everything is so multicultural now. We all come from different
Yep.
places and we're taught how to behave in different ways. And so, and how can we do that in an authentic way, still be ourselves and still learn how to communicate properly and be
Yeah.
compassionate with other people? It's so hard. It can be so, it's just, yeah, just even little things like I worked one where there was a dog friendly office and I love dogs, right? So I was always like there, and there was always dogs coming to see me and I had treats. And but then there was a man who was from India, and he got
Yeah.
attacked by a street dog when he was young,
Sure.
and so for him, it was terrifying. So if a dog came
Terrifying.
up and I was, if I was talking with him and the dog would come up to say hi to me, he'd be like, "Hey," and he would sort of
Oh.
get freaked out and jump away, and I was like, "Wait," and, it was like the most friendly dog ever who wasn't gonna
Yeah.
bite him, but he just had that knee-jerk reaction is just,
Yeah.
and I was really confused by his knee-jerk reaction. And so once I understood and actually got curious, instead of judging, being like, well, where did this come from? And I understood that he had this trauma when he lived in India, then I could be more compassionate with him and I could, not call the dog over when I would be speaking with him so that, he would feel more comfortable. Yeah, it's just so interesting how we all have such different experiences and come from different places and therefore need to figure out how to live in these environments together, and work in the
And
environments
it's
together.
to know each other, it's like to actually get to know somebody, to let go of the judgment of what we think of them because of where they're from. And like the more we realize how we are all the same, it's so common. We're all humans trying to make our way on this crazy train called life. And when we really stop and connect and talk to somebody, and we see their perspective, we can understand it. We may not always agree, but we can certainly understand it. And then that gives us way more compassion.
Yeah, yeah. This tool I learned recently in positive intelligence was that if you're in a conversation with somebody, say at work, and they're talking about something that you completely sort of disagree with, right? You're just like, that doesn't make sense. So instead of sort of going to that judgment place or being like, no, I'm right, you're wrong, that is, I think they called it like a 90-10 rule, where there was like, there's got to be something that you can agree with or that you
Right.
think is good. Or, so
Yeah.
there's
Yeah. They're
something that
finding
you
some
can,
sort of common ground. Yeah. That
some
we
type of
both,
common
we
ground.
both could actually agree on this.
Yeah, and so the way to say, be like, "What I like about that is," and then you focus on that thing. What I like
Yep.
about what you just said is this,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
then you can maybe lead the conversation or share what you want to do or see if
Yeah.
and if even just like if you can let go of what you want, just be like, oh yeah, I find this, and then you can say what I like about it this is, and then who knows where you could go with brainstorming on that, or how
Right.
creative you could get with that one little common thing, and may actually what the output could be something that neither of you had thought of.
Right.
It was just sort of spurred from this one common thing.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation during like the Roe v. Wade whole thing that was going on with a student of mine who was pro-life. And so it was a great conversation for us to ask each other questions to really get in the world of, why we believed what we believed and not making the other one bad or wrong, just like understanding through the power of questions, which is actually one of our modules, power of questions.
Yeah, and that all perception is valid, or even with your own perception, you can have of different things. You can see things from different sides, or depending, how we always say that, there's two people saw the same thing, but would tell you different stories.
Right. Totally.
But neither of them is wrong. And so you
No.
can try and see that like, oh, okay, like I can understand where you're coming from, or
Yeah. To
maybe
know
see
that,
it.
like, to distinguish between facts and beliefs. When people get really righteous about, well, this is the fact. Well, no, it's actually your belief. And you are totally allowed to have that belief. Is it true? It depends on who's looking at it.
Right.
We're able to be neutral and we can hear people. That's when we can connect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
It is tricky. And also, like, sometimes I've found that some people can be kind of like pushy with what they want or their experience and kind of put it on you. And I find with me, I just retreat and I just
Yeah.
think like, "Oh, like, yeah, okay, you believe that." Like I don't wanna
Yeah.
get in some argument or some big long
Yeah.
discussion because I don't agree with you, and I don't know if I'm
Right.
probably a bit triggered, so I don't know if I'm gonna articulate it properly, and then, like, I don't know where this is
Yeah.
gonna go. So sometimes I just go in silence, and sometimes I find that they think that silence means that I agree with them, and I'm like, "Not at all."
Mm.
But I'm just not gonna
I
go
want
there.
to deal with you.
Yeah, yeah, I just don't wanna deal with you. Yeah, so do you have any, like, for someone, say, like me, who just sort of, like, wants to retreat, any sort of, like, tip on how someone can, um, I
I
guess,
think
not
it
retreat,
depends
but
on the situation because if you're with a very confrontational, righteous person and you really just don't want to give your energy to that, I don't think there's anything wrong with retreating. It's just this isn't something that you want to use your energy for. You have spoken your mind, it's not being listened to, you know, it's not really your job to train them to do what you want them to do, and they're not going to do it. And so, I don't know. I give my energy, like, I don't give my energy away. I'm interested if somebody wants to dialogue with me and can stay neutral and open, but if somebody is getting righteous and angry and they can't see anything but what they believe, or not that they should change their beliefs, but they can't be open, I probably won't have that conversation with them.
yeah.
But I can be in the same space with them. I can have no judgment about them. I just choose not to give my energy to it. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's a really good point.
We have to manage our energy, right? It's not time management, it's energy management. Because when we
Mhm.
have reserves, we can do more in less time. But when we're drained because we allow those vampires to drain us or different things, then we can't get anything done.
Yeah, and that's really being aware of what either things or what people do that and how you feel afterwards. Which is kinda
Yeah,
interesting for me because a lot of people, my friend, they're like, think that I'm extroverted, but I'm very much introverted, but I'm like a social introvert. But when I go out and social, I stick with my people. I don't necessarily
right,
like talk to other people. Like they might talk to other people and therefore I have to kind of talk with them because they're talking to them. But
right.
and so but me myself, I am, which really got brought out during the pandemic. because all of a
Mm.
sudden, all of us, and then through there, I realized, how different I felt not always being sort of in these situations. And I started to become really more self-aware about what actually drains me. Because now that I realize that I'm an introvert, it's like, okay, right. So if I do go somewhere where I know nobody or a networking event, I need my quiet time afterwards. I need
Uh,
stuff. And especially if it's even during Zoom, if I am like in Zoom meetings all day and say I have like two networking events and I'm meeting new people and I'm pitching myself and whatever, I will sometimes go lie on my couch and just sort of, and I'll just nothing. I'll just sort of stare at
Yeah.
whatever and kind of be in my
Yeah.
head, thinking about something, not thinking about anything. And sometimes like an hour will pass by. I'm like, have I been here for an hour just in silence?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm
Intense.
so drained by it, and but I've come to a place where it's like, no, I'm gonna allow myself to do that. And I'm gonna make sure that I have time afterwards to just go
Yep.
and just have silence, because that's actually what I need. And then I'll feel more invigorated, get my energy back, and
Right.
be able to do whatever I need to do for the rest of the day. And same with people, right? How do you feel after you're with somebody? Are you drained? Are you irritated? Or are you like, that was awesome? Or do you feel good?
Right.
And yeah, that's
Yeah.
also
We
a
have
real
one of the
key.
tools, ease, energy, and enjoyment. And if you're not having ease, light energy, and enjoying the person at least 80% of the time, it's going to be DDD, dull, difficult, or depressing. And so if you can't exit, because that's the fourth E for exit, the relationship, then how can you transform it? How can you turn lead into gold? And we do a qualities
Mhm.
exercise where they discover their five, values, their five qualities. And maybe those are connection and fun or trust or love or freedom or whatever it is. And then if you look at that relationship, those things are probably missing. So instead of trying to change the person, how can you bring more connection? How can you bring more joy to that situation or creativity into the workplace? If that's missing for you, it's not about quitting your day job because you got to pay the bills. So how can you bring more creativity, and what's a creative way to do that or create more freedom inside of what you're doing? So it's,
Yeah,
because we can't always exit the DDD situations.
totally. And I love that. It's like, take charge of it. Right?
Yeah.
Kind of like
I feel like a
take control of
victim.
it. Yeah, if you're missing that,
Yep.
then,
At it.
bring it. Yeah.
Mhm. And sometimes you can't change it. And there will be a time where you might have to exit that relationship, but you want to give it the good old college try.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of just being like, "That's it, run
Yeah. I'm done.
away.
Yeah.
I'm over this. I'm over you."
Yep.
And I think like we were talking about earlier, that compassion comes into it too, because maybe those things are missing right now. You're not getting your needs met, but it could be because of something else that person's going through, where they're in a place where they can't even think about providing anything to you right now
Absolutely.
because they're just about themselves. And so you can come and
Yeah.
be like, what could I do for this person? And then
Yep.
kind of see where it goes, right? But if you just sort of like give up and abandon them, then you'll never know if it could have been something.
Right. True. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's all this sort of like outside the box thinking that we kind of, that this program that you're talking about really brings that, right? Like, how can you
Yes.
bring outside the
Yeah.
box? What can you bring to the table to help yourself and also maybe help other people as well?
Yes. Absolutely.
All right, well, that's just, we talked about so many amazing things today about like how to clear things out and how to be authentic and how to kind of like bring that to make things more creatable, and how to have these non-ordinary states of consciousness and what that can do for you. And we shared so many amazing tools. But before we end, I know that you have some upcoming retreats that you wanted to tell us about.
Yes. Let's see. I have some writers' retreats that I'll be doing
Ooh.
in Nashville, which is really fun if people want to get the book out of their head and into the world. I have a retreat coming up in Ireland. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, and probably cook up a few more retreats, but if anybody wants to check them out, they can go to jennifergrace.com. Yep.
Awesome. And I think also on your website, you have your Meet Your Future Self meditation.
Yes,
right?
so they can download that there. It's a really cool meditation where you can journey 20 years into the future and meet the older, wiser, been there, done that version of them, in order to, ask a question, something that you're yearning to know.
Yes, it's a great meditation. I've done it several times actually. Sometimes I go back to it. I'm like, what do I need to know now?
Yes, let me ask her. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And also in the show notes, I'm going to put the link to Jennifer's TED Talk that she talks about the why mindfulness should be just as important as math in our schools, which I absolutely is so true. We need to get that into schools, which
Oh
I think is
yeah.
to
We
happen,
are.
right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. We have many schools have our program now all over the world. Very exciting.
Yeah, that's so great. So great. So do you have any final words of wisdom to close us out on?
Let's see. You are creative. We are all creative. We just have to stop and listen, take time out to take long walks, do the things we love, journal, meditate, because all the wisdom is within.
So true. Thank you. Such wise words. And thank you so much for being here. Episode number 2. So happy that
Yay!
you're
So
here.
excited.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope it inspired you to live a more authentic life. I'd love your help in inspiring more people to live authentically. So please follow, rate, and leave a review so we can create a ripple effect of authenticity. Until next time, stay true to you, be bold, and thrive on your own terms. This is Elisa signing off authentically.